What do you do when the very platform that's meant to share your art with the world feels like it's actively working against you? Well, it's a huge problem for a lot of creators. But today, we're looking at one artist who decided to fight back with data. They ran a full-blown forensic audit on a streaming giant, and what they're calling for is nothing short of digital sovereignty. Let's dive in.
And this quote from the artist Carl Light just says it all, doesn't it? This whole story is about the clash between two completely different experiences. On one hand, you've got a system that feels like it nourishes you and helps you grow. And on the other, something that feels, well, just too cunning.
So, before we even get into the spreadsheets and the stats, let's talk about that feeling. We have to understand the two different worlds this artist was living in. One felt like a real, thriving community. The other, it felt like a cold, calculating machine. Okay, so this chart pretty much nails the difference. You look at SoundCloud, and the whole vibe is about connection, right? Direct messages, comments, collabs. It feels organic. Then you have Spotify, and the experience is just totally different. It's corporate, it's algorithmic. The interaction is passive, and for this artist, it left them feeling manipulated, even suppressed.
And here's where the rubber meets the road. Just take a look at these two dashboards. On your left, that's SoundCloud. On the right, Spotify. These two screens are ground zero for our entire investigation, because the numbers just don't add up. This is the discrepancy that kicked the whole thing off.
All right, let's put on our detective hats and start the audit. We are going to follow the data trail, piece by piece, to really understand the case that this artist is making. This is where we move from a feeling to cold, hard facts.
And here we go, Exhibit A. This is just a 30-day snapshot. On SoundCloud, which is a much smaller platform, the artist pulled in nearly 10,000 plays. But on Spotify, the global giant, they got less than 2,500. That is a 4x difference. It's our first major red flag. I mean, how does a platform with way more users lead to way less engagement? It doesn't make sense.
Okay, so that was just 1 month. Now let's zoom out, way out. This is the artist's all-time data from SoundCloud. We're talking 1.16 million plays since 2019. And you can see it right there, a clear, beautiful, organic growth curve. This is what natural audience growth is supposed to look like. So this becomes our baseline. Remember that number, 1.16 million.
So you've got years of obvious growth on SoundCloud.
But on Spotify?
Here's the kicker. The artist reports that their monthly payouts were somehow always stuck, right in that $30 to $50 range, month after month, year after year. That growth just wasn't reflected in the paychecks at all.
This is where things get really personal. This stagnation made the artist feel like they were being played. So they decided to run a few of their own tests to try and unmask what they called the system's cunning games. They needed to know, was this just bad luck or was something else going on?
Okay, you have to hear this. First, they noticed this earnings cap, no matter how much music they put out. So they tried an experiment. They took down a bunch of their albums. And you know what happened? The payout for the few songs that were left was still in that same $30 to $50 range. Wild. It was like the number of songs didn't matter. Then they tried paid promotions. They saw real people engaging on social media, but on their Spotify stats, nothing. Crickets. It was like they were paying to promote to ghosts.
So what does all this alleged suppression actually look like in dollars and cents? This is where we follow the money. Or, the money that should have been there. By using that organic growth data from SoundCloud as our guide, we can start to figure out what the artist could have been earning in a fair system.
Let's break down the math here, and we'll keep it simple. Based on their SoundCloud numbers, they were averaging about 193,000 plays a year. Now let's be super conservative and say Spotify, which is at least 10 to 20 times bigger, should give them a 10x multiplier. That gets you to almost 2 million streams a year. And even with a tiny payout rate, let's say $0.003 a stream, that should come out to around $6,000 a year. Now, let's stretch that out over the artist's 6-year career. A very conservative projection says their earnings should have been somewhere between $72,000 and $180,000, but their actual payouts, with that weird $30 to $50 a month cap, they made maybe a few $1,000s total. I mean, the difference is just, it's breathtaking.
And all of that brings us to this one final, staggering number from the audit. The artist estimates the total financial damage, what they call suppression theft, at over $175,000. And remember, that's using conservative numbers based on data they already think is being held back.
But look, this story isn't just about tearing something down. It's actually about building something new.
The artist uses his full audit as the launchpad for a manifesto, a vision for how creators can take back power and build a better system for themselves. It's not about trying to fix the old broken model, it's about creating something entirely new. The goal is to build a system that reflects the artist's world feeling. One that's built on honesty and real connection, kind of like that positive experience they had on SoundCloud.
And that brings us to this big idea, digital sovereignty. It sounds complicated, but it's really simple. It's the principle that a creator, an artist, should have the right to control their own art, their own data, and their own money without being manipulated by these giant platforms in the middle.
So what would a system like that even look like? Well, the principles are pretty straightforward, but they're also kind of revolutionary. Ownership always stays with the artist. The stats are transparent, no funny business. Wealth flows where it's supposed to. It's a vision that expands way beyond just music, where the artist's own work is the thing that matters most.
And that leaves us with a big question to chew on. As more and more creators feel trapped by these massive platforms, maybe the answer isn't to try and change them from the inside. Maybe the answer is to just leave and build your own world from scratch. Is that the ultimate act of sovereignty in this digital age? It's definitely something to think about.